Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wild Woman Podcast. Today, I have Lacy Fewer with me. She is an Irish award-winning author of her debut novel, Yankee Land, and it was just launched this week. So I'm so delighted and privileged to have her on the podcast and already to great acclaim. From what I'm hearing, it's just, and I know because I have a copy of the book and I've read it, and it's just so moving and so touching. I just have to be careful not to give away any spoilers. I'll do my best, but a fabulous book. But already the book is the recipient of the Literary Titan Book Award, and it has won two more book awards this week, and it's receiving rave reviews. And I think what's so beautiful and important in the times we're living in, it's a book that's telling a very powerful story of family secrets. It's addressing mental illness, and it's also reflecting the challenges of women navigating patriarchal society over a century ago. And what is so, yeah, it just seems divinely designed. But Lacy was confronted and found out about her family history, which had not seen the light of day for many decades, when she was given two large mailbags of belongings and letters from her deceased grandaunt's estate, who had emigrated from Ireland to America in 1908. And even just imagining this, of her being there and going through all these hundreds of letters and postcards that were written across the Atlantic. I mean, so many of us, I think, in Ireland can really identify this with having ancestors who emigrated around 90, it was around 1908. And some of the letters had never been sent or read and were unsealed. So here she was in, I think, early 1990s for the first time to open these up and to read them. And what I think is so beautiful is in reading the book that these people are being given space and are honored in their book. In this book, the secrets are being revealed. And I think we are living in a time of secrets being revealed on many fronts. And I think it's essential, both personally and collectively. And just before I bring Lacy on, what it really has brought up a lot for me around my ancestors and my own life story. But many of the guests that I have interviewed, it really have told, I'm just realizing as I reflected on it, are telling their story of harboring secrets for many years that caused them great pain, sometimes of their ancestors that are carried, sometimes of their own. And it is in telling their story, which is what inspires me to do this podcast, helps them heal and hopefully helps us all heal and really go on and live our lives fully and without fear. And it's so beautiful. I just think it's such a beautiful book. So yes, I would like to welcome Lacy, who is also, this is what's really interesting. I think we are not just one thing. We have we are many things. Lacy has worked in the financial services sector prior to writing this book for over 30 years. So this is just phenomenal to show us what's possible. There's always infinite possibilities in our lives. I truly believe that. So welcome, Lacy. I am so delighted to have you as a guest.
Great. Thank
A
you.
long preamble there.
That was an incredible preamble. Thank you very much. I might get you to do all of my podcasts for me. That is brilliant.
Well,
You've
I'd be
really
delighted.
done a great honor to Yankee Land, and thank you for that, Celine. I'm very grateful. It is wonderful that you did get to read an early copy of the story, because I think that's what has inspired us to talk today. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Celine, for that. Um,
How has this week been so far since the launch? That's the
yeah,
first thing I
yeah,
want to ask you.
it's
What's it been like?
So when I was writing Yankee Land, I made the decision to go with an American publisher. And the reason I did that is because I believe that obviously there's a huge diaspora of Irish American people. There's 40 million in America who claim Irish heritage. And they have a great love of Ireland, great love of our culture. And I felt that this story would probably have a better opportunity if it was distributed throughout the US. More so than, obviously, we have a much smaller market in Ireland, but an incredibly important market in Ireland. So it has been an incredible journey. I have learned so much on this journey because I've been based in Ireland and my publisher is in America. I have had to take control of a huge amount of aspects of the Irish aspect. So I have my official launch on Wednesday, the 9th of April in Hodges Figgis at 6 p.m. and all are welcome.
Fantastic.
That's the official launch in Ireland for the book, but the book is being distributed, as you say, from the 25th of March in America. I have been blown away by the early reviews. Like, obviously, anyone who writes a book, you do so with the intention of it doing well, but it's an incredibly vulnerable time in your life. It's I said it's like having a baby and you put it out into the world, and some people are going to love it, and some people aren't going to love it, and some people aren't going to care. But the early reviews have been phenomenal, and for me, it is so emotional. I was here on Tuesday night, the night of the launch, and Goodreads had about 135-star reviews. Reading the reviews for me was phenomenal, Celine, because it was like they saw into my soul, they saw into my dreams and ambitions for the book, and the key themes that I was trying to do justice and honor. The readers really, really got that. There was a couple of reviews in particular that really stood out for me. One of them was from one of the awards I won, the Spotlight Story Award, and they said, "Have you ever felt that history has quietly erased stories that should have been shouted from the rooftops?" In
Wow.
Yankee Land, Lacy Fewer's historical fiction unearths one such tale, forcing us to reconsider the past we think we know. So there's many of them, but that one stood out for me. So yeah, it was a fantastic journey in writing the story. It's a family drama. It is a work of historical fiction. I will clarify that. So while it's based on true events, there was obviously only so much that I knew, so I had to fill in the gaps. An incredible journey, and you'll see here beside
How did you, yes, how
some of my
did you
books.
fill in all? Because it was very
Yeah,
obvious from reading. This was very authentic, very, yeah,
yeah.
it just felt you were in there with the characters. That's what I really felt like. And emotionally, I
Yeah,
mean, I have just found it very emotionally. I'm not going to make this about me now and bring it, but just for
great.
anyone listening, like it really takes you on a journey inwardly, I found as well, because you're sort of there with the characters.
Great.
And it just shows like they're the same common themes, regardless of when we live, in what time. We all have hopes and dreams and pain. So they're as relevant today, I believe, the themes you're talking about as they were at that time, and just such a strong woman, and all of the
Yeah.
characters really. But yeah, sorry, just it was
That
going
that
to
was
ask
one
you
of the
there.
things funny that stood out for me. And I wrote a piece, they were just like us. I wrote it for my website, a blog, because you're right, Celine. I remember sitting there reading those letters, and I have them framed here behind me as well. Um, but what really stood out for me, there was one little line in one of the letters, and Molly was writing to Bridget from Ireland, and it was in the early days, and it was this sense of you're living the dream, you're in America, you escaped, you got to go away, I'm stuck here in this village. But one little line in it, she was saying that her husband had gone off for a motor to Dublin, and she said, "I'm left here all alone, and I only have the mission on here at present. Isn't that great excitement?" And she had an exclamation mark. And I just thought that was riveting, because that's
Mm,
what I would say to my friend if there
mm,
was a mission
mm,
on here in the village. I thought that was riveting, that wow, to say that, it just tells you the bond between the two cousins. They were the absolute best of friends. There was so much love between the two of them. And they shared this, language. It was wonderful. And you're right, I
mm,
mean, everything I believe that those women experienced, that they, you know, how they felt, how they talked about it, was very similar to what we go through today. And
mm.
this is the current environment that we're in. It's a big, big question for women. What has changed? So
Yeah.
when I look back, and there's one book in particular that I've been doing a few readings from, and it's called The Women's Guide to Health and Disease, written in 1893 for doctors. And if you were to unearth, Celine, what's in this book, it's no wonder why women were perceived the way they were. There's even a piece about how man's brain is 4.5 ounces larger than a woman's brain. And like, how can a woman expect to compete with a man on an intellectual level? How can we expect co-education of males and females? So and completely dismissing women's medical ailments. They were likening it to fashion and having a milliner for their headwear and, a dress. This is how this book was a bestseller in 1893, and it went out to all physicians across America. So when you really get in under the bonnet of history, and when you really do your research, and it was very important for me to be as accurate as I could. Now, I am a great lover of that era. I am a huge, always have been. I would live in the 1920s if I could.
Really?
Oh, easily. Even writing the book, I played the music of the time. I've done a Spotify list for Yankee Land just on the music of it, because that was really important for me. I had a lot of magazines. I had loads of stuff surrounded me every day. So when you understand the environment in which these women lived, you do have to realize, it's like hindsight. We often say, you look back on something in hindsight, you have to put it into the context of the time. And women were completely dismissed. You were there to marry. Your success was rated by being married, by having children, how many children you had, how good your home was, all that sort of stuff. So Bridget had what I saw probably a lot of myself in her. She was
Mm.
a powerful woman. She was strong. She really, really did. And I got that from her letter. She wasn't afraid to really go after what she wanted. And she was going away chasing her dream. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out as well as she obviously had planned. She came up against a lot of resistance, but her resilience, I hope, stays true, Celine, throughout the book. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that sort of hits on that little piece for you.
It does. And it definitely, I can see this is what's so interesting as well. It's so wonderful to meet you, the author,
Mm.
having read the book, because it's like I could nearly feel her spirit. And this is what I personally, I don't know how you feel about it, but how that sort of energy and spirit transfers down in our DNA ancestrally. And often, yes, the pain, but the other thing that strikes me is the gifts. I see that very much. Yes, sometimes we have to honor the pain and reveal, take the lid off some of these secrets, but also what's passing down. And I see in you is this, as you said, like you've had your career in finance, you've been in a sector where I suppose it's predominantly male, isn't it, as well?
Mm. Yeah.
And so it's just lovely to see that has. Did you feel more connected to your ancestors, obviously, as were researching, and did you feel, what was the biggest discovery you made about your ancestors and family in, personally,
So
yeah, beyond the,
I,
yeah,
beyond the sort of obvious,
yeah, yes.
I felt hugely connected. Those letters, I believe, were waiting for me, Celine,
Mm,
because other people had visited, yet it was me, the youngest of that generation, who was handed all of this material. And I will never forget, as long as I live, that day, sitting on that floor, literally spending, an entire day piecing it together and then discovering the secrets. And then there was obviously all the pain that went with that, and all of the, you know, I suppose the discussions that happened. My own immediate family were fantastic, because obviously we had experienced our own sort of issues, but they were wonderful, really supportive. We had many discussions about it, but then you realize that obviously with history, people don't always know. People have an idea of something, but they don't really understand. And what people don't know, Celine, then they don't really want to talk about. So
mm,
that was probably one of the discoveries. I felt very connected to Bridget and Kate throughout the journey. Particularly Bridget, I would say. And there were times, I'm not going to deny, where I found some of my research overwhelming. There was one time when I got some of the records from Kate's hospital admission, without giving away any spoilers, and I actually had to throw it into the fire and burn it. It was so traumatic for me to read, and, you know, it was so overwhelming. And again, that's fact, that happened. So it
Mm.
took me another period of time, a couple of years, to then to maybe sit with that. And then the second time around reading it, I was stronger in myself and I felt much more able to address it.
But
So
how long did you have? Was it 30 years before you
over
actually went to
30
go to
years, so
over 30 years?
1993, September 1993. Um,
And do
I
you feel that time was necessary for you to sort of,
100%.
okay, okay.
100%, Celine. There is no doubt that the experiences that I've gone through over the last 30 years are in my writing. Absolutely no
Mm.
doubt. Like, I speak from lived experiences. So I've gotten a lot of feedback, particularly around, I suppose, the mental health aspect, having struggled myself a little bit with post-traumatic stress and, anxiety at times. I don't know anyone who hasn't. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we will all. So I was able to draw on that myself. So I really felt into some, not all, because I couldn't have, but I felt into some of what they experienced. And again, some of the pieces that I wrote, there's another piece I wrote on my website called "'Tis Only an Owl Wink." And that was written after a funeral I was at in Clare. And the priest was going on about how somebody had died, they were very elderly, and sure, their life had passed, and it was only an owl wink. And I was sort of angry. It was a beautiful sermon, great, lovely, lovely funeral, lovely send off for this elderly person. But I thought to myself, how could somebody who has struggled with, mental health issues say that their life passed in an owl wink? Because every second of every moment of every day is, a lifetime to somebody like that. And I had a line in the piece saying, the luxury of your life passing in an owl wink.
Mm.
I thought, what must that be like?
Yeah.
So yes, I hope that that comes through in my writing, Celine.
Yeah. And in terms of the theme, let's say, of mental illness, do you want to talk a little bit about, I don't know how much you want to go into here without giving too much, I suppose, of the story away, but
Yeah.
how do you feel, I suppose, what am I trying to ask you here? How do you, in terms of understanding and hearing and reading about Kate and Bridget and your own family, did it help you sort of look at it in terms of like how trauma may be passed down, or how do you see? Because I know mental illness has many different, there's a lot of research being done, and I know in that whole area. So where has it led you to in terms of your understanding of, what leads to mental illness?
I would feel, Celine, that I really think that a huge amount of people are touched by this, and this is why
Mm,
the story resonates with people. And I can only speak as the carer of somebody who has
sure.
experienced it. And I have huge empathy for the families and the people around somebody who may be affected. I think that is a critical aspect of mental health that is sometimes maybe not addressed. Um, and I know over the years, having, been involved in certain aspects of it myself, I know that, nobody ever stopped to ask me, was I okay, or did we need help or support with anything? And I know from talking to a lot of people who do have somebody in their life, maybe, family or a friend or a loved one who is experiencing mental health issues, that they really don't know where to go. It's quite scary time. It's a very vulnerable time. You're trying to protect the person who is impacted, yet you're also trying to be a voice for them. I think there's very little, I don't think enough has been done. And you and I did talk at one point, Celine, about what's changed in the intervening
Mm,
period. Unfortunately, from what my research has shown, the only thing that has changed is maybe the pharmaceutical aspect has increased. I 100% support the pharmaceutical aspect of mental health, and there's a huge need for that. But I really think that the more holistic aspect probably needed more focus over the years, and it hasn't been given it.
yeah. You know what struck me? It's just coming up now as you're speaking. I think it was chapter 17, without going into too much of the specifics there, but it's really where Bridget, it seems like she's almost finding another aspect to herself, where she, I don't know if I'm okay to say this without going too much into the
Yeah.
story, um, but I suppose a more, let's say, spiritual dimension or holistic
Yes.
dimension to herself. And
Yes.
what I sensed as I was reading it is like she was really coming alive. There's a line there where she says, "Oh no, that mustn't be for me." Where they're saying, you're here
Yes.
to be a part of this change. There was something
Yes.
I felt like, whoa, go, Bridget. I just felt there was something waking up in her, and you went,
Yeah.
and then it struck me that that was sort of taken from her, you know.
Yeah.
So just in terms of the conversation around the holistic side of it,
Yeah.
to me, it feels like, and anyone I speak to, that unless we look at all aspects of ourselves, we are not just one thing, you know,
Mm.
we are going to struggle if we don't look after ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So, and did that come because it's written beautifully? I have to say in the book, it's
Wow.
really written beautifully. So there's also that going on there as well, and there was that period, there was that time in America, there were people who
Yeah.
were open to that side of ourselves. So how do
So
you think that
that's
played
a
a part for her, I suppose?
that was a really wonderful discovery because two aspects to this. First of all, personally on my own journey, I found the support from alternative offerings got me to where I am today. And in fact, my next book, I am hoping to explore that one woman's journey through the various modalities, Celine, and I have
Wow.
huge respect for the alternatives, huge respect. And I believe that it is dismissed, it's undervalued, it's overlooked. And it isn't until you've had the benefit of some of these that you really see the value in it. So when I was doing the research for Yankee Land, I discovered in the early 1900s, spiritualism and spirituality was a massive booming
Mm,
trade.
mm.
And I don't think this is a spoiler, but near Niagara Falls, one of the locations in the book, there was a community, I suppose, and it's still there today called Lilydale.
Wow. Oh,
And
it's still there today. Wow.
still
I might
there
be going there.
today. So when you start Googling, it's fascinating. And Lilydale was where these, what they called a lot of them humbugs, and there was a lot of exploitation in that time. Now, one thing I will say as well, Celine, I think that still happens today, because when you're in any unregulated sort of industry and it's quite loose and you're sort of relying on the goodwill of the person that you're dealing with. So
Mm,
that's an
mm.
interesting aspect. But Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a of spirituality.
Yeah, that surprised
Fascinating.
me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Me too. So there is so much footage on him, and he spoke in Niagara Falls, and so a lot of the information I have in the book is fact, in that
Mm,
the historical experiences did actually happen. So I know that I myself turned to alternatives in my life. Celine, I am so lucky to live just up the road from the Hill of Tara. I have attended many wonderful ceremonies there. I was a regular at the full moon ceremony. I'm not afraid to say it, and it was wonderful.
there's nothing, yeah.
And for me, I've brought my children to it. For me, I've always tried to have an open mind in life. I have always tried to experience as much as I can and not judge, but to take it on board for what it is and for how it could benefit me. Um, so I am really open to it, and I think it was important for me to include that aspect in the book, and
Mm.
and the fact that it was so rich in those days. It was such a phenomenon, and I have numbers of books from that period. Yeah, so that was actually a really wonderful discovery for me.
Wonderful. Yeah, because what I loved was the language as well. I suppose this is what now I'm speaking here personally. Everybody will have to read the book for themselves. And I think
Great.
that's what's so beautiful because you say that as well, Lacey. I know you said your desire is to explore rather than explain. And isn't that, I mean, I just think that's the most beautiful. Um, description for what you might, for yourself and what you might want for readers, that each of us go on that journey, because life is exploration. That's how I see it. So what I'm saying here is it's very interesting, it's very personal, but it will resonate and really jump out at me is what I need to hear. And I think that's what the beauty of this book is. Each person will go on their own journey with it,
And that's the
inwardly.
exciting part as an author, you know.
Mm,
So as a writer, as an author, you're really, it's quite a vulnerable time as well, Celine, because you're putting out into
mm,
the world something that is really close to your heart and you're really passionate about it. This story for me was such a labor of love. And I am a perfectionist, and I know I am. So it meant that, particularly with my historical research, I never wanted anyone to come back to me and say, oh, this didn't happen, or that wasn't there, or that. So it probably took me longer than it might have taken some authors to write a book, but it was my first. It was a really important piece of work for me. So I needed to make sure that my, research was extremely accurate. And that probably is my mantra in life, is to explore, like
mm,
my own. So yes, I worked in the corporate world of finance and, had a fantastic career in that space, but I was still very open to all other areas, particularly in the sort of more spiritual realm. I have huge respect. I have fantastic connections. Um, and, I think that we're very lucky in Ireland. I think that we've got a
yeah.
richness, Celine, and an openness to that. And if something I'm, speaking about doesn't resonate with somebody, that's okay, because, I don't
Mm,
expect everyone, having worked in a corporate industry, you're very, very used to being resilient, and
mm,
that's okay. And that's maturity as well, gets you to a stage in life where you're like, look, you've, once you're coming at something from a place, I believe, of integrity and
mm,
authenticity is
mm.
really, really important for me. Um, that I think is what can shine through. And I sleep peacefully at night because I know that that's what came into this piece of work.
Well, it comes across, I have to say,
Right.
in a book, and I think you can't fake being authentic, and
Mm.
really, it comes from a place of heart. That's what I feel. And I think that's where we always connect really, with each other and cannot, be very open and understand maybe and see and hear each other. We can only do that, I feel anyways, for me, if I'm in my heart, because
Yeah.
otherwise, you can go into judgment, I suppose, or but a question I wanted to ask you as well, which another is at the end of the book, and it really struck me. You said, I'm not giving any spoilers away here either. And
Mhm.
finally, to 10-year-old Anne
Oh,
Marie,
yeah.
of course, you were always going to write. I love that line. And it's a common theme again with any of the
Mhm.
women I've spoke to, not even intentionally, it always comes up and
Yeah.
back to something in their childhood. So was that always there for you, that
So, yes, it
idea
was.
or
So I
desire to
was
write?
always a huge reader, and I think this is an interesting story. So I was always a huge, huge reader. I was a massive fan of Maeve Binchy in my teens. Massive. I read everything I could get my hands on. And the reason was because, my life wasn't a bed of roses as a child, and no more than a lot of people, I experienced various forms of adversity. But in Maeve Binchy's books, everything always worked out okay in the end. Everything always
You
did.
did, you did.
Always. And I loved escaping into that world. And I loved, that this is what it could be like. So it gave me a real sense of what life could be like. And I got so much hope from that. And so I loved that writing. When I did my Leaving Cert in 1989, I wanted to do journalism. I didn't get the grade I needed in one particular subject. And I repeated because I was adamant I was doing journalism. And I was doing a lot of writing at that time. I was involved in a lot of different committees and areas, and I still didn't get the results I needed. And in 1989, it's hard for people to understand now, but there wasn't PLC, Celine. You know this. There
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
alternative routes. So I gave up, and I ended up in banking for a considerable period. I got married. I had three beautiful children. I then did my master's in finance. So life took over and I got very, very busy. I always wanted to write and I always knew I was going to write. It was just a matter of when.
Really, that was
Oh,
always,
always
always there.
knew.
And were
Oh,
you writing alongside throughout? Like, were you writing
yeah, yeah.
stories or poems or?
So I'm a voracious reader.
Mm.
I am an absolute. I could have 10 books beside my bedside, and I dip in and out of all of them. I absolutely love, and I love, I love books from all walks of life. Probably more on the literary sort of side. Um, and actually, just to note, it's funny on two of the reviews I've received, they've likened my book to Colin Tobin's Brooklyn, which I think is just fantastic.
Well, that came up to me as well, and I straight away thought movie.
Oh, well, it's been said. It's been said.
Yeah,
And I've been
I
asked
can
what
feel that.
characters
I can
do I
feel that.
see?
I that did come to me as I was reading it. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
well,
much so.
look, who
Mm.
knows? But
Yeah.
so I always knew I was going to write, and my poor husband and all my friends, and I mentioned my friends at the end of the book because I'm sure I had them driven demented over the years talking about this and alluding to the fact, and I'm sure it got to a stage where they thought, listen, we're just sick of Amory talking about this, but I've achieved a lot, Celine, in my life in that I was a mother to 3 children. I was, at a senior level in banking and working away. And then I did a master's in 2015. So I, and the reason I did that, everyone said to me, oh, is it for your next promotion? And really for me, no, it was more to draw a line in the sand and to have something to show for all those years. And I'm delighted I did it. I think education helps all of us. At that, at any
What
stage
was the master's in? Sorry.
in finance. So it was very much,
Okay. Oh, yeah, it was in
it
that.
was
Yeah.
very much just a continuation of what I've been
Yeah.
doing. But I have been doing a huge amount over the last 3 years in the literary space. I've attended every literary festival in Ireland. I have, been to open mic sessions. I've been to the UK. So that has been wonderful. And I literally felt like my first day at school. I bought a backpack and I'd head off into Dublin and I knew nobody. But for me, I was at the bottom of a ladder I wanted to climb. And that was so refreshing at my stage in life to be entering into something.
Oh, I'm getting the chills there. I'm just thinking of Bridget even, and I'm just thinking of
Yeah,
just how you're living. I just, yeah, but I just get this. Sorry now to interrupt that, but it's just,
that's
it literally,
wonderful.
when you said that, the bottom of the ladder, right? I literally can nearly feel that, sometimes our ancestors didn't get to realize their dreams in many cases. And it's like, there's an opportunity for us to give. I it sounds like
100%.
give, life to that or expression to what they didn't get to do. I just think that's part of why we're here too, more
It,
so recently.
it absolutely, and we are
Mm,
all so riddled with fear, Celine, and
mm,
fear of opinion and fear of what if it doesn't work and what if it. And I think my experiences over the last sort of 20, 30 years have got me to a stage in life where, most of what I could have expected to happen has happened. So there's not an awful lot else more that can go wrong for me. That's the way I feel.
mm,
I have felt into every type of pain that there is and I've come through it. I've come out the other side, and I am surrounded by fantastic people. I value my friendships greatly. They add a huge amount to my life. And particularly this week, you asked me at the start of the call, what has this week been like? And even in dealing with yourself, Celine, women are so inherently powerful. We have the ability to achieve so much more than we realize. And I think historically, because we had to always fight, we had to push forward. Um, I think that that has come through into our generation, and I think that we shy away sometimes from what we're capable of. So I sort of feel that it is wonderful. I feel like I'm only starting over again. I really feel like I'm starting over again, and it is fantastic. So
wow.
I would say that to anyone out there, anyone, Celine, just do it. Get over the fear. It's not going to be easy. And you have to be prepared to have challenges and to have, and sometimes, particularly as a woman, I feel that every time you put your head above the parapet, you can get slapped down. And I have had plenty of that in various manners. But I think that your own strength of character needs to shine through. And I do believe that we're supported by the generations behind us. I really hope Bridget,
Mm.
Kate, and
Standing on
Paul
the shoulders of
are
giants, isn't
cheering
it?
me
We
on.
hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And do you think things have changed? Like, we talk about a patriarchal society over a century ago, and then people, I'll ask you, and I just give you my sense of, because, that where we're living it now, I started in banking as well in early 1990, and there was all this, you can have it all. And, I'm all for everyone going the path they want to go. I don't think there should be any limits for anyone, male or female. But it's almost like things nearly go out of balance, don't they, in one direction and in another before we come back into some sort of harmony. Because I always feel sometimes, and maybe this is unpopular to say, but sometimes I think men are given an awful hard time because, you
Mhm.
know, they're trying to find their way in a new way, it feels as well, over the last few years. Because I think the patriarchal society, it wasn't necessarily about men. I think it was a distortion in terms
Yes,
of how that sort of, and then women, I know it in my own experience, and I witnessed it and experienced it, where women knew no other way than to try and be like that. So the whole thing became a bit
absolutely,
self-perpetuating. Not that anyone
absolutely.
necessarily wanted it. And many men I've spoken to have said the same. So where would your dream or vision be for how we sort of move forward? Because you're a woman who's been in a predominantly male sector, at a high level. So what would be your
So that's a
vision?
great insight, Celine, and I'm so glad you sort of brought that up because I did try to really get that across. And my male characters, I've gotten fantastic feedback on them about how, inherently good they were. Because
Mm,
it was really important for me to portray that they were just doing what was expected of them in that society. I did not make them out to be baddies. So I'm
mm,
really, really glad you brought that up. And I was thrilled to see the early reviews were, really picking that up because it would have been so easy to, say that they're all
yeah.
this and they're all that, and they weren't. And I have a 21-year-old son, and I 100% agree that, young men are coming into a world where maybe they're not sure of their place as much as they were because we had such an upsurge in, 2010, 2020 and, female rights. And you're right, it's like a pendulum. It has to
Mm,
completely swing one way to come back. Now, unfortunately, masculine, toxicity has come back a little bit as well, in America. So it's to try and get this balance right. So my view on it all is that, like I've always worked with fantastic men. My best friends, I have a huge amount of male best friends that were colleagues of mine, and the most amazing, fantastic people. But I think that in life, people have herd mentality sometimes.
mm,
And when anyone feels threatened, Celine, male or female, they can sometimes just revert to type. Women are equally as capable of some of the harsher aspects of humanity as men are. So I just think that we need to row it back a little bit and we need to just look at the society that we're in and how can we impact it. Like as a mother of a son, it's really important for me that I raise him, to understand the role of the male and the female. I remember asking a question once of a very senior person who was retiring, and this person was the only female at the time in the role. And I asked, what did you feel you brought to the table? And the answer I had hoped I didn't get. So the answer was sort of like I was brushed off as if, oh, apart from the obvious. But what I wanted that person to say to me was, the whole emotive aspect. I believe this is where women really come into their power because we give that emotional, emotive balance, which is needed,
mm,
and it's needed
mm.
in all aspects
All
of
of us, and in all aspects
really,
of life,
yeah,
yeah.
in all of us. And it may
Mm,
not always come naturally to men. And that's why this whole balance in life, we need each other, Celine.
mm,
And if we can just get to that steady
mm,
state where it isn't a battle and it isn't a fight and it isn't people having to march and protest and, this, taking away the DEI and all, I just hope and I do believe I have huge faith in the next generation because I think they are fantastic. I have three children, Celine, and I really see in them, they don't have a lot of the hang-ups we maybe had.
mm,
They see equality for what it is, and
mm,
they see diversity for what it is.
mm,
They don't what we were probably raised with, and they don't have. And I that's a real testament to the education system in Ireland too. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I think that we have got much better at exposing younger people to that. So I do have great hope for humanity.
yeah, yeah. Good, good. Yeah, no, it is. And I do too. I really feel it is a time for, moving into that balance as well. And I see it in men and women. It's this,
Mm.
I think, a shift when you say emotionally, I sort of call it, well, for me, it's like the head and the heart. They need to be aligned. We've been led to believe we only, I think when you operate from the head only, that's when we start getting into competition and division and judgment. When you come back into a more heart-centered, I think that is the only way forward, I think, in terms of organizations and humanity.
I think you're
Because,
right. And
yeah,
Celine, just on that point, when my head was challenged, I had no choice but to come into my heart. And I don't know if that resonates with you, but anyone I know who has had their head challenged by overwhelm or whatever it may be, you're really stripped bare of everything that you know because we operate in a head society.
yeah,
Everything we do is
yeah,
using our
yeah.
brain, using our everything we confront in life, whether it's through our employment, through our life, through our family, through our friends. So when that is taken from you, and again, I try to get this across in Yankee Land, Celine,
Yes,
really
because
to
that
you,
came to me,
good. That's
it really came to me. There
fantastic.
was, yeah, a couple of lines, and it really struck me that when we separate ourselves out into these compartments, we do suffer because my experience as well of any mental health issues I've had, they're always because of pain and wounds and emotional things that we've suffered in our lives and probably suppressed,
Mm.
and hence, how powerful your book is. And that what they always lead me back. If I can come back in and feel what I'm feeling, I can come through it. And I think for anyone listening, anyone who may be struggling, it is an important, really important message in this book as well. I think there's someone, whether you are suffering or know someone, I think we all do. It is such an empowering story. And I think because all of these characters, there's a few, if you don't mind, and there was a couple of
Yeah,
lines, but particularly at the beginning, it really struck me how our childhood is so, we're formed so much in our childhood. It doesn't mean we can't heal and grow. There's a beautiful line, and I think I can say it without it being a spoiler because it's at the very beginning.
good,
Is
good,
this
good.
okay? I have to be
Yeah,
careful now.
right.
But it's at the very start of the book when their mother has,
Oh yeah.
is that okay to
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
line
yeah,
that
yeah.
it really struck me and how this could have formed and how it can form all of us something happening when we're a child. So
Mm.
just the sentence is for Bridget, the day her mother has died, all sense of belonging died with her. An ache remained and a want to escape this life that had been shattered by grief. Oh, I found that so, so moving. And it sort of gave an insight almost maybe into, why she did
Yeah.
make the move.
Experience what she did. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
what led her
yeah,
maybe to do what, where she went
yeah,
and going to America. But it was just, I think it's
yeah,
important, I think, for all of us, isn't it, to honor those, these experiences and understand. Yeah, how do you see, sorry now, Lacey, just
yeah.
around that sort of trauma that can happen in childhood or ancestrally? How do you feel like it
So
sort
I
of
think it's
plays into
really,
how we turn out?
again,
Mm,
you've had such a great insight into the book and how you
mm,
relate to various aspects. So that was really important for me because I don't know what happened to Bridget.
mm.
Obviously it was in history. So and I
Yes, yes,
fictionalizing an experience,
yes.
but
I'm forgetting that because it is so
yeah, because it
so
is
in it.
so,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know it's amazing how
Mm,
people are relating it. It's wonderful, and
mm,
that's what you hope any good book will do. So for me, Celine, if we look at children, so, and again, I am a parent, and truth is really fragile. And I coined that phrase in writing this book. The truth is very fragile. And I understand that. And I understand that there are many, many good secrets too. And I'm, not dismissing secrets. However, we often think we're protecting children by not telling them the truth about situations. However, and I can only speak from my own experience, when you don't know the truth, what happens? Your mind goes into its own little world and you start to make up your own realities and you start to imagine and you internalize. And I've heard from so many people who I've spoke to who maybe lost a parent and they're so filled with what could they have done differently or was it because of them, or for whatever reason that it might be. And I think that we just need to get better. I've tried, I'm sure I'm absolutely not perfect, but I've tried to always be as honest as I can with my children, um, to tell them the truth of situations. And sometimes the truth is hard to deliver. Sometimes it's not easy to deliver the truth, and the easy way out is to sugarcoat things. But if you think about it, I grew up in a society where children were to be seen and not heard. So that was the
Mm.
society that I grew up in. You were told absolutely nothing, nothing was explained to you, you were just off you go. So I can only imagine in sort of the late 1800s, and women were dying all the time in childbirth. Like it was really, really common for that to
Mm.
happen. And the societal expectations, like I've heard from women, Celine, in the last 60 years who've had children and babies, and you know, maybe stillborn or very traumatic experiences. The babies were just taken from them and buried in sort of mass graves. So like this isn't that long ago either, where
Mm.
all of this stuff was just stiff upper lip, zip it up and get on with it. It was, the real stoic sort of move on, battle through
Mm.
it. So I think that we carry this, if things happened in our
Mm.
generational, then I do believe we do carry, generational trauma. So if we have experiences that maybe did happen in the 1800s, the early 1900s, surely that carries through, um, genetically at some level. There's no
Oh yeah, and
trauma.
epigenetics,
Yeah,
I mean, and
yeah,
even environmentally. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I listened to something my mother told me recently, and I went, "Oh my God, that was through, something that happened through my grandmother, and probably before that came down. I had my mother thinking a certain way about something, which obviously I grew up with her. She's
yeah,
so I'm going to, so it has
yeah.
to impact on some way. So yeah, it's just I
So I
just
think
found
it's,
that was very
yeah.
poignant or something to read it and go,
So I
yeah,
try to put myself into their shoes as young children. And 1 minute their mother is there, perfectly healthy, about to give birth. And I don't think it's a spoiler because it's very early on in the story. You know, Life is going on as normal. And then next minute, she just doesn't come home. And you're not told why, and from my research, that is how it was dealt with.
mm,
And I can see that. I'm sure you can. I'm
yeah,
sure most people
that's,
can see how that
mm,
would happen. But it's to stop in this day and age and think about that,
mm,
give some thought to those children who lost their parent and what that must have been like. And, the husband trying to cope as best as he could, manages, run a business, all of those aspects. And nothing was discussed, Celine.
yeah,
Thankfully, now I hope in a society we're a little bit better at maybe talking and, and having outlets where we
yeah,
can discuss things. Therapy to me is, I think everybody should have. It's like having a life coach. And it was always seen as very American back in the 90s, very American but oh my goodness, to have somebody who has an impartial view, who isn't
mm,
emotionally connected to a situation, how amazing is that?
yeah,
Um, so there wasn't that. I don't even know when
mm,
psychotherapy came about, maybe in the 1920s, 30s,
mm,
Freud and all of that.
yeah, young and yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
could be
So
that.
vastly different to where we are at today.
Mm,
Vastly different, but we are still carrying those wounds.
mm.
And
I-
it helps us understand, Celine. Sorry, I know you're going to
No,
say,
no, no, sorry, no, I've just when you're saying it brings up what also I think that when reading the book and reflecting maybe on our own answers, Esther's, is the compassion and to realize, what really brought up for me, our parents or grandparents did the best that they could with the
mm,
level of awareness that they had at the time. We hear that quote a lot, and I can say personally I've often
oh,
forgotten it. So there's another beautiful, I suppose, message there for all of us just to sort of reflect a little bit maybe on what life might have been like for our
yeah,
parents or ancestors. I think it's really helpful to do that because it can help us understand life, can't it, in a new way. Maybe because things have
absolutely.
changed so dramatically, like in so many, um,
I think people, all we have is the present. All we have
Mm.
is this moment right now. We cannot change the past, but we can learn from it, Celine. We need to acknowledge it, which is the first thing. And, again, a couple of the reviews that I got.
Do
One
please.
here,
Yeah.
that this is not an easy read. It does
Mm.
not indulge in sentimental nostalgia or offer an easy resolution. But that is precisely what makes it so powerful. It lingers, it haunts, it demands to be remembered, not as a fairy tale, but as a reckoning. And
That's powerful.
yeah, that was really
Yeah, I
powerful.
read that. I thought,
Some of
yeah.
these I couldn't have written myself. They were like so good. I was like, wow, I'm going to use that.
Mm.
So I tried to honor as much as I could what happened at that time. And it's so tempting. And when I was getting into the writing space, this is really interesting for anyone who does want to maybe become a writer. You listen to all the voices. You hear all the voices, whether to publish, whether to self-publish, all these voices. And then you hear about genre writing and what's popular. And love stories are hugely popular. Science fiction, hugely popular. So if you want to make money, go that route, because if you can churn out these books
Mm.
that are happy, feel good, fairy tale, that's where you'll obviously have success from a monetary perspective. But I just couldn't do that. Much and all as I wanted to be Maeve Binchy. I really, Celine, wanted to be Maeve Binchy, and I wanted the book to be so cozy and warm and all to work out in the end. I just couldn't. This is what came out. I,
Mm.
gave my heart and my soul to this story. And there were so many incredible coincidences. I don't know if I can talk about the time when I was shaken in the middle of the night and woken
Oh,
as
do please, do
so,
please. You shared that with me,
and,
yes, before.
and
Yeah, please.
back to, some people will either resonate with this and some people won't, but this actually happened to me, and it never happened before in my life and it hasn't happened since. But I was making a very big decision about whether I was going to leave behind my role in corporate finance and actually sit down and write this book that I'd spoken about for 30 years. And an opportunity presented itself. But the opportunity was been challenged and challenged and challenged. And really, it was the pull to stay where I was really, really strong. And when you're, somebody who has a lot of financial responsibilities, and it's not that easy to make a decision to walk into the complete unknown, which is what I did. And whilst I was making this decision, one night, Sunday night, Monday morning, 4 a.m., I was literally woken up by somebody taking both my shoulders and, really, really aggressively shaking me. And I remember so clearly sitting up in the bed, and I, caught my breath, and I looked around, I looked at my husband and he was asleep. And I remember feeling myself doing this, going, this has happened. I remember that so clearly. And I was trying to come to, what was that? Who did that? What was it? And I looked to the corner of the room. And in my logical brain, I had a daughter who was an adult, and I saw a female figure, and I started to call my daughter's name, and I called Lauren, Lauren. And as I called, the image disappeared. And I wasn't afraid. Now, if you told me, Celine, before I went to sleep that night, I would have told you, forget it. I will never sleep again if that happens to me. But I was not afraid. And I was very calm, but I just kept touching my body. I kept going, this, I can feel myself. This is real. This has happened. And my husband was sleeping, and I went back asleep, and I was really calm. And the next morning, I phoned my friend. She's been my best friend since I was 4. We sat beside each other at school, and she's still by my side today. And I had been with her on the Sunday, and I rang her and I said, I had the weirdest experience last night. What? I actually still have the text, because I was texting her first to see was she free to talk. And straight away, she said to me, what do you think it was? And I remember feeling really foolish. But because it was somebody I could trust, I said, do you know what? I said, I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but I felt it was Bridget coming to me to shake me out of my indecision and tell me to write the book. And it was on that basis, Celine, that I signed the paperwork to leave behind a very successful career and write this story. So if that doesn't give somebody encouragement, I don't
Oh, I'm
know.
getting chills. So you say the signs are there, would you? If
I would
yeah.
100%.
Mm,
And,
yeah, me too.
they talk about the flow state and they
Yeah.
talk about the universe and all this, but I have probably always felt I've had a very, very strong sense, Celine, of listening to my sort of inner guide, for want of a better word. And there are times, and I do say, in the book, for my husband for supporting my ambitions, um, my husband knows that I have these dreams, and most of them do come to fruition, but Celine, it's not without a lot of hard work, right? So I
Yes,
will say
yes.
to anyone, if you
Mm,
feel a strong desire and a pull to do something, do it, but be prepared to put in the work. That's the key thing, is that, you need to fill in the dots. But I don't know, I can't explain logically with my brain that experience that night, but I can tell you now that happened to me.
yeah.
And I have felt incredibly supported on every step of this way. And another interesting piece, and I think it's in the book, I did mention that I remember on the 23rd of August, 2023, sitting down and writing the end. And I typed, and it's sort of a fun thing as an author to go, the end. And I remember sitting, and I was sitting in my office where I am now, and I remember thinking, that's something about it. And I started going back through all my paperwork. And Bridget had died on the 23rd of August, 1957.
My God.
That was just another of these little coincidences that, I saw as being very supportive. So,
Yeah.
yeah, a
It
little bit.
sounds like a marriage of the two, like what you say. And I wrote a book, or wrote two books myself, and the same thing. I always felt structure and flow always comes to me as well. That you being in the flow state,
Yeah,
and allowing the inspiration and whatever to come through. But also you have to get, I remember listening to Maeve Binchy talking about that, getting up at her desk every
yeah,
day, 8 o'clock like a job till five. Now everybody does it differently, but I love what you say, because also it's a reminder that I again I go, I believe we are multidimensional. We are not just one thing. We are more than a
yeah,
mind. We have so much going on, and when we can marry the two,
yeah.
which is like what you're saying, you listened to that, but you did the work. You had to put the work in. So
It's
would
where
that
the
be
magic
your, yeah,
happens, Lynn.
yeah.
Absolutely, you're right. You need to listen. Don't be afraid of it. So
Mm,
many people I speak to are afraid of these. I have huge belief that the universe is acting on our best, with our
mm,
best interests at heart. And, different experiences happen in our life. And unfortunately, most people are not awake to it, Celine, because
mm,
either they're not able to be, they're so caught up in not being present, and they're so caught up in the past, or they're so caught up in the future. And listen, I've been there too. I get it. I know exactly what that's like. But I think that if more people just learn to trust, and I remember somebody, when I was 40, I went off to Omega Institute in upstate New York to do a mindfulness course. And because again, it was part of the path I was on. And it was my 40th birthday present to myself. And I went on my own. And I remember meeting two incredible women there. One lady from Miami, another lady was the head of HR for a hospital in Wisconsin. And she gave me a little stone that said trust. And I still have it by my bedside. And it took me another 10 years to actually trust, but I get that now, Celine. It's about trusting. My mother had a wonderful saying, what's for you won't go by you. And I do believe
mm.
in that. But I think that you need to put in the work.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Lacey. That's phenomenal advice,
Right.
though. That really is.
I
Have
hope
you
so.
any other final words for listeners about the book? And yeah, and how I know you touched on it a bit, and what maybe you might, your desires for readers, or anything else we haven't touched on that you'd like to share.
I think we've, really
Covered a lot of ground, I
explored.
suppose, without giving the whole thing away.
Yeah, I see. This is actually
I
something I'm
know. It
learning,
was, mm,
not to give
yeah.
spoilers, but it is a very rich Irish American immigrant family story. That's at the heart of the book, and it's following the lives of two cousins and how their life played out through the letters. Um, and for me, when I talk about secrets, again, another piece I wrote,
Mm,
and I've no doubt, I do say that I've no doubt the secrets in this story came from a place of love. They really did, because there was the love for the characters and protecting them and doing what they felt was best. I did say, you know, surely truth is a far greater act of love. Um, and I remember that. I remember the impact of
Mm,
that, of seeing how these characters in their lifetime did not find out the truth. It took until, 60 years later for me to uncover the truth of what happened. And that has never left me, and it's still with me, Celine, that you can live a life and you can pass away from this world, and the truth of your existence was not known. So it really made me reflect on my life and the truth of my existence and what do I want to be remembered for, and you know what do I need to share with those that are impacted by my truth. So that never left me, and I really hope that readers internalize the book for themselves, and that I do think that, and I hope that a lot of people will reach out to me who have maybe experienced um, loved ones who have had mental health difficulties, because I do believe there's a market there to support the people who are on the periphery.
yeah.
An awful lot of the time, the focus is on the person who's suffering,
Mm.
and I do allude to that in the book as well. And I do have a dream, and I think you had
Yes.
said
Do
that.
please share. I wanted to
Yeah,
ask you
yeah,
about that
you
dream.
had sort of said
Apologies.
that to
Yeah.
me. So I, you know, I do believe, so I know, Celine, when I experienced a few roadblocks in my life, and you go to your GP, which is where we all go, and you're offered a pharmaceutical solution. And I remember asking, do I need therapy? And I remember being told, you can if you want, sort of a thing. Now, this is a long time ago. And thankfully, I had the strength of character to go and seek out alternative solutions and supports. And again, look, it's not easy, but we do this. But I believe that there is an offering. My dream is to see on every high street, complementary to your GP surgery, is an alternative offering that will look at the four key pillars of health. And what I mean by that is the physical, the emotional, the financial, and the spiritual. And what I would love, what the 30-year-old Anne-Marie would have loved, is to walk in the door to somewhere, to feel, you know, I think of the theme song to Cheers, where everyone knows your name, but to feel heard and to feel just at ease with the turmoil that you're experiencing. And emotional difficulties can come out of financial difficulties. It can come out of physical ailments, Celine. So we're not just a physical body or a mental body, or
Mm.
we're all four. And I think for us to live in peace, we need equilibrium. So I would love where you go in and your needs are met or assessed, and that there's the various offerings. Because I don't know about you and your experience with the spiritual realm. I know with mine, it's really just, you Google, you get onto Google, who's out there, who does what, it's word of mouth, it's, even me going off to New York on the mindfulness retreat, I was trying to find out, well, who's sort of the best teacher out there and all. There's no one-stop shop for these supports. And I think about people struggling, and my heart goes out to anyone who's in that very, very dark place where it's really frightening, it's really scary, you're just about able to cope, you're just about able to get through life. And I have huge compassion for those people. And I would love in time for it to be mainstream, for it to be absolutely as mainstream as you walk into your GP, Celine, that there will be an offering. There is something in America, that's the closest I've come to it, but again, it's only looking at the sort of emotional aspect. I've been over to the UK, so I've done a lot of research in this. I've seen a number of charities in operation, but again, in my experience, charities tend to struggle. They have wonderful manifestos. They don't always get to deliver as well as they would like. So I believe this is an opportunity, and that would be my dream.
Okay, so watch this space.
I
With
hope so.
Lacy. And I love that it's rare you hear the financial and the spiritual mentioned together, but I think it's
Absolutely.
time they are, because isn't it
Yeah.
often you hear people who are very holistic in their work? Someone will say, I used to often I don't find this intriguing. Like if you work in a bank or you work in a particular sector, it's absolutely okay as well to do well,
Yeah.
financially. But often people, just as sort of separately as well, who work maybe in a more spiritual, holistic way, often will have this, oh my God, I can't earn money. Oh no, 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 it's all wrong. But like that's the sort of thing that we sort of nearly need to move away from. It's okay. It's okay
So
to
I think it's
be
placed in
abundant. I
value.
use the word abundance because I think that's where it comes from. If
But
you,
it's
yeah.
like a transaction. It's a money
Yeah, it's an
energy.
energy exchange,
It's
exactly.
an energy exchange, Celine. But
Mm,
for me, the financial piece comes in because of the experience I've had in that space. I've
mm,
seen the impact on people's
mm,
well-being when their finance is out of sync.
yeah,
So I believe that there are basic tools that people need. And, so somebody could present and they're suffering from stress, suffering from anxiety, suffering from overwhelm, when really it could stem from a physical ailment. It could stem from a financial difficulty.
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm also on the board of a non-executive director with an organisation in Ireland that does seek to support people in financial difficulty. So
Yes.
I see firsthand the implications
Mm,
mental well-being. So I just believe for us to be in sync as a race, there are
yes, I
factors,
understand. Yeah.
and I think we can't look at any one in isolation. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a powerful combination when you see your background in finance and then the writing and this story and how it all sort of weaves together. It's really, really powerful.
and I'm
And
also writing another book. So
oh
yeah.
yes, do you want to? Yes, yes.
Well, no, I'm just saying though, I love the writing. That is, I'm
So is this your passion now, do you think, as well as, I
absolutely.
mean, you can have a lot of passions, I know, but this
This
you're
it's
going to continue.
to find people talk about finding, their passion.
Mm,
I have found it,
yeah.
in writing is literally turning up
Hmm.
the page. And I know you've written a couple of books,
Mm,
Liam. It really is, isn't it a wonderful
yeah.
experience to
Yeah.
create,
Yeah.
to be able to create these pieces. And hopefully I have done it, and I'm sure you did too, and I know you did with your books to help, and if it helps one person, isn't that amazing? You know,
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
one person's lane to pick up your book
Mm.
with your experiences, that is your job done as a writer. So,
Yes. I have to, so
yeah.
sorry for those who are watching, and there'll be those watching and listening. And very remiss of me, I didn't show this beautiful cover. Do you want to say a few words about, I actually can see a resemblance, even though I know this isn't an
Oh,
actual, but I do. Just maybe tell us a little bit about how you came upon the title, Yankee Land,
yeah.
and the cover, if you wouldn't mind. I meant to ask you that earlier.
Great questions.
Mm.
You can see your skill as an interviewer. So the name Yankee Land. So really important where that came from is the letters. And when I read those letters in 1993, that was what they called America. So when they were writing to each
Oh,
other across the Atlantic, it was, you got away. We both dreamed of going to Yankee Land. And, so all the way through, it was what they called America. And what,
really? I know we
yeah,
say Yankees, but I never heard
yeah,
of Yankee Land.
that was the
Okay.
name. Now, then, when you do your research, you realize it's got a different number of different connotations. And I remember saying to my publisher at the time, look, what do you think of the name? I hope, it doesn't have any sort of connotations that mightn't fit with the book. And they actually loved it. They said, because nobody ever really uses the name in a book. So, but my sole reason for calling it Yankee Land was the name that they gave to America when they were writing to each other, Molly and Bridget, across the Atlantic.
Wow.
And I thought, it made me think about the word and what it meant to somebody sitting in a village in Ireland, writing the word Yankee Land. What it must have been filled with mystery and so exotic. And, I just felt it embodied
Mm.
what the experience was for Molly, who stayed at home, and for Bridget, whose dream it was to go over to this place. So that's where the name came from. The cover of the book,
Beautiful.
fantastic cover designer, Danielle Kohler with Kohler Books.
Yeah.
And
Look at it. I
I
don't know if you can
had
see it properly.
yeah,
Sorry,
it's,
no, it's hard to see it there.
and so I have a copy of it here actually myself as well. So I don't know if you can see that a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
So
Yeah.
you'll see here, for me, what we were looking to design was I wanted the image of the woman, looking towards her future and looking towards America. And that's why the American flag is in the background. And for me, she's so full of promise and hope and excitement and joy about what's ahead. And really, she was going to live her dream. And then you obviously have the little bit of green here, the period costume, but these are the actual letters.
They are the actual letters.
They are, that
Okay,
is a photograph of the actual letters. And there's another great story with the letters. When I went to do my research, I'm conscious of time here. You
okay,
can
for a
probably
few more.
stop
No,
if you
okay.
need to. In 2018, when I went over to sort of do more research in San Francisco and California, would you believe I turned up at the address in Bodega Avenue in Petaluma of these letters, and the current owners were in their garden and let me in, and it had barely been touched, Celine, in the 100 and odd years. And it was the most exquisite Victorian um, property, detached on its own with a little farmland around it. And it had the balconies, and it was all a mahogany, a deep, rich mahogany interior. And I have videos of going into that property, and I could actually, and that was where they lived when they first
My
moved
God.
to San Francisco. So all of this has huge meaning for
Mm.
me. And I hope that when people look at it, again, great feedback on it. I've been told,
Oh, I
obviously,
love the cover.
yeah,
I love and I love the title. I actually never realized, but it
yeah,
does feel like that. Oh, I'm going somewhere really
yeah, just
Yankee
that,
land. It's a really
yeah,
uplifting,
yeah.
and the music. Sorry, I just have to say that I don't know if it was taken from because when we finish, just for listeners and audience, I'm going to put all of the links to the book and Lacey's website and her social media. But there's a beautiful, oh my God, talk about evocative post you put up on Instagram of the cover and the music. Is that from the playlist? Or
Some
is
of
it
it is.
another? There's
Yeah,
one
no,
of them.
it's
It's
probably another track. So
is it? But it's
with
a
socially,
beautiful piece of music.
yeah. Oh, good, because you're
Just
trying.
of that period.
Yeah. Oh,
And
everything is off the period.
yeah, yeah. And I played it for my mother, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's like the
Oh,
movies." She
Celine.
was just
Oh, that
so
that moves my heart so much
yeah,
to think of
yeah,
your
yeah.
mum. And I think of that generation reading this
Mm,
story with so much emotion because it's closer to them, Celine, probably even than it is to us. And I really hope it gives people, it gives people the remit to just go there with some of this.
yeah. Thank you.
That's what I
Thank
hope.
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for giving space. It's a real reminder, as well as you said, that truth is fragile, but also the importance of honoring our
Mm,
ancestors and giving space to maybe, the dreams and things that they didn't get to fulfill,
yeah,
but and just to honor their lives and their gifts to us. So thank you
yeah.
so much, Lacey.
Thank
Best of
you.
luck. I can only imagine. I'm looking forward to the movie already.
Oh,
And
great.
I really am. So please make sure there's the print copy I saw. I'm going to put the links. So is there an audio book or is there a hard
No,
copy?
no. And
No, not with
again,
the
my
yeah, it's difficult.
publisher is American. I'm in
Yeah,
Ireland. So for the moment, but obviously all of these things are up for discussion. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think yeah, but movie definitely. I can imagine. Yeah, can see it. Can see it.
Uh,
So
I
thank you,
could I could
everyone.
let you in on a little
Yeah.
secret before I go. When I was in America in 2018, I bought an outfit. So this is how I operate all my life. I do things years in advance. I bought an outfit for the premiere.
Well, that's
I have an
manifestation
outfit.
101, isn't
I
it?
have an outfit in my
Absolutely.
wardrobe. And I'm putting it out there. You're the first person to know
Fantastic.
this. So
Fantastic.
let's see.
Well, oh my God. Now, isn't that is a message to us all. We have to see it, don't you? You have to
It's a
see it.
wonderful
Yeah.
period dress. I bought it
Oh,
in
wow.
New England, and it was in an old vintage shop, and it was just, and I looked at it and thought, oh wow. So I have it in the press.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll
It's happening. It's
I'll show
happening.
it to you. Yeah, it's a
You've
bit of
heard it
fun.
here.
You heard it here first.
It's
Exactly.
happening. Thank you,
Brilliant.
Lacey.
Thank
And
you,
thank you
Celine. I've
so much
enjoyed
for your
it.
time today. And
And
best
thank
of
you to your
luck.
listeners.
Yeah.
Thanks, Celine. Best of
Take
luck.
care. Take
Best
care
of
for
luck.
now.